When you own property on a Great Lake, you don't own to the water's edge. You only own to the all-time high water mark. The public has the right to traverse in front of any property as long as they're on the water side of the all-time high water mark. So I have never had any clients or known someone that didn't know that, but there's all sorts of lawsuits that were issued and things throughout history where people buy a house and they're like, get off my property.
Welcome to Momentum in Real Estate, your guide to success in the dynamic world of real estate. I'm Cory Wolf.
And I'm Kristin James. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned pro, we're here to help you reach new heights.
Success in real estate comes from learning, growing, and serving others.
Join us as we dive into strategies for lead generation, marketing, market trends, and client relationships.
Get ready to ignite your momentum and achieve your goals in real estate.
Let's dive in and unlock your full potential.
This is Momentum in Real Estate.
Well, hey, everybody. Today's guest is Christina Roberts, a true Northwest Michigan local with deep roots and a lifelong love for the outdoors. Licensed since '99 and full-time in real estate since 2005, she brings decades of experience and a genuine passion for helping clients find their place in this beautiful region. With a background in plant science and a heart for growth, both in nature and in people, Christina pairs local expertise with a thoughtful, nurturing approach. When she's not working, you'll find her exploring Michigan's seasons with her two kids, from hiking and canoeing to skiing and snowshoeing. Welcome to the Momentum in Real Estate podcast, Christina.
Thanks for having me.
We are so excited. So share with us a little bit about your real estate story in your own words.
Well, I got to tell you, I never wanted to be in real estate. It just so happens. So both of my parents are realtors. My mother, I kind of gave up being in real estate. I think as we got a little bit older, but my father is still 74 years old and he's still at it 60 hours a week. So it kind of just, I grew up in the business. And when I was 18, I found myself kind of conflicted a little bit. I wanted to leave the region, born and raised here, to study something. I didn't know. I thought maybe I'd go to Colorado and study photography. But then I was blessed with my son early on. So I didn't leave. Long story short, tried to like reshift, and my father just said to me, "Hey, Christina, why don't you just get your real estate license just to have it?" And I thought, "Oh, okay, I'll do that, but I'm never going to be a realtor." Um, and so on and so forth. Turns out I'm pretty good at it. Is what it comes down to. So I got into real estate full time after my second child was born, and it's just continued to grow from there.
I love it. I love it. You're the accidental realtor. Well, and so many of the agents that we talked to did not have kind of a traditional path into real estate. I don't even know if there is a traditional path into real estate. So you're not alone in terms of your kind of entry being unique, into the industry, but certainly having, your parents in the industry does obviously lend some influence. But I'm curious about you have a background in plant science, and so obviously like probably didn't see yourself working maybe with humans, with with nature. But how does that actually give you a perspective and lens, especially as you work with raw land and helping people find places to maybe build?
Well, it's, not just with vacant land, but also our region up here has a lot of wetland. It has a lot of upland. It's got a lot of different types of soils. And so whether you have a residential house on a small lot or on acreage, or vacant land, or even a waterfront home, especially those waterfront homes, it's crucial to kind of know where is your septic going to go? Because septics are not cheap when you have to engineer them. So I think what helps me in my plant science studies was that we also had to learn, like zoning and building requirements, which go hand in hand in real estate. So I would say my perspective of things is always to find the highest and best use of each property, whether it's vacant land or waterfront or so just a home somebody needs to live in, right? And looking at the site in itself as what does it look like now? It's spring and our area just got a lot of rain after a lot of snow. And so you have to like look at properties with this bigger lens of, okay, it's spring, it's wet now. July it won't be, but for instance, what's it going to look like in January when the snow is blowing and you got 3 feet drifting over this driveway? What's that look like? So I think it's really helped me in that education just to identify the site for what it is. Because the number one rule in plant science is you don't fight the site. You're never going to win against Mother Nature.
I love that. That's great. And it's so interesting. I've had a couple clients come to North Carolina with the Michigan mindset of like, you have all these sump pumps and everything. And it's not very normal here, even though we are very wet. Excuse me. We like live in a rainforest, I say that in quotes because it just rains a lot. So it's just interesting to hear you say like you really have to look at all the different seasons and where you're at. So I'm curious too, like what is the market looking like in Michigan right now? Is there like migration from other parts of the country? Share with us a little bit about that.
Well, we've always had 2 different markets in this region. We're a vacation destination. Not only do we have Little Traverse Bay, Grand Traverse Bay, but we also have all of Lake Michigan and some of the most beautiful inland lakes in the world. And we've got Torch Lake, which is a spring-fed lake, crystal clear. We've got Crystal Lake, which is also crystal clear. And then we have Lake Charlevoix and Walden Lake, just in this small little region. They're the most sought out destinations. Well, I would say in the country, I'd even venture to say the world. So we have our locals who live here, they work here, they're here year round, and then we have our seasonal homeowners who are here sometimes all summer, sometimes who knows. So we've always had 2 markets. But what I can tell you is after, this whole COVID market, as I like to call it, things have finally settled down a little bit. We're back to being able to catch our breath. We're back to the market stabilizing a little bit. And what stabilizing means, at least for this region, is houses sit on the market for more than 10 seconds. They're now on the market for about 30 days if they're priced right, which is a pretty strong market over the history of the last 20 years. Having homes come on the market and be there for 30 days is about enough time to do the transaction. So they're still selling pretty quickly. What I'm seeing primarily is we've had about a 2-year situation where sellers have had to come up or catch up to the reality that you don't get to just price your homes at anything. It isn't what do you want anymore. It's this is what the market is telling us. So there's been a little bit of catch up, but we have had quite the migration to this region. I think we always have, but over these COVID years with people going into a kind of remote working environment, they're able to live anywhere. So instead of being in a city, they can be in a forest and then they can go swimming on their lunch break. So I think people have really taken an opportunity to do that. And a lot of people are migrating from Colorado, Oregon, California, Texas. There's just, I'm trying to run through. Those are primarily where people are coming from. And we hear a lot of the same things. Like, why Northern Michigan? Why did you choose this area? And you'll hear things like, I'm tired of the wildfires, droughts, environmental conditions. Also, just like have some peace of mind. Have a little bit more acreage opposed to being boxed in by your neighbors, and affordability. But the one thing that nobody says, but they're all thinking it, is that Northern Michigan feels safe. It still feels safe. I would say the majority of this region is broken up into small little communities that are so tight knit, and the neighbors look out for each other, and that's like something out of a picture perfect Mayberry community, but it's real. It is really real. And I think most people that come here, they feel that. I mean, I can tell you, I've owned a number of homes in my adult life. And the home I'm in now is the first home I actually had keys to. Never received keys to any house that I've owned. And it's not uncommon. So it just speaks to the feeling of safety in this region.
So I get the sense that you're in a kind of heavy vacation market. So I assume you work with a fair number of investor clients. What's the makeup of your clientele? Like how many people are kind of more local to the area that are upsizing, downsizing, or moving into the area to live full time versus like those who are looking to pick up an investment property. They want to do STR. They want to, you know, what's that makeup look like?
So I would say there's about 4 different brackets there for my business. In other realtors, I mean, there's a number of realtors in our area that have different clientele, but number of mine is broken down into 4 criterias, and they're about 25% of my business each. One is locals. I work with locals. I have a client that I've had for 27 years. He has bought and sold a number of properties for investment purposes, but also he runs a big dairy farm, so he needs housing for his employees, and he needs land to grow his crops to feed his cows. So that is, that's the repeat referrals that I come to me from just building relationships and getting to know these people. The second one is seasonal. Seasonal clients, they come and go. Sometimes they show up and are really serious about buying something, and then they go home and it's like they disappear off the face of the earth. They're just gone, they're never to return again. And sometimes they buy stuff. So it's like you just never really know what's coming at you. But then I would say, solid 25% of my business too is people migrating to this region. I just sold a house last Wednesday, closed on it, and those buyers I worked with for 3 years, they were referred to me from another agent out in Colorado. They would come once a year. This is a fun story. They came once a year just to bring me jam and to open up a map and say, where would you live if you like to do the things we do? And it was really fun because I got to be like, okay, they love to fly fish. So I took them to the areas, and they came up, I think, in total, maybe 4 times, and just to explore the area because they didn't know the area. And so the last time they were up was in August, and I sent them down to a little community, Manistee, which is just about an hour south of Traverse City. And they absolutely fell in love. And they said, that's it. That's the place. So when their house went on the market this spring, it sold right away. And we found them the perfect house in 2 weeks. And they closed on it, and they haven't even seen it yet, other than video. So those are fun because that couple, and we've become friends. We just have. And then the 4th criteria that I work with quite a bit is vacant land. And so in the vacant land, perspective, there's just a million and one things you can do with vacant land, right? You can build a house. You can build nothing. You can grow crops. You can, if it's a forest, you can start a management plan for the forest and enter it into the commercial forest program with the state of Michigan and get a discount in taxes. You can develop it. So there's just so many things you can do with vacant land. I have a client he's also my friend. He's been my client for 10 plus years. I've probably sold him, I don't know, maybe 500 acres in the last 10 years. And he just buys forestry land, and that's his family business. He owns 6,200 acres. He will never sell any of it. And it will always be there available for a renewable resource in forestry products. And with those properties, they're all enrolled in the commercial forestry program, which allows anyone to go hunt on it for free. So it also opens up a whole nother resource just for the locals in the area to be able to go and harvest deer.
That is so cool. I
Yeah.
want to dig into that a little bit. So that sounds a little more into like the commercial territory. So, I mean, is that commercial and residential? Is that kind of mixed in?
Nope, this is just vacant land.
Okay, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so how do you use that for like explaining ROI to your investors with land and like do you promote that anywhere? Do you market it? Do you get that 25% of your business? Like, do you work at that to or does it just come by word of mouth?
No, I try not to promote that because that's a special investor.
Mm,
That's a long hold to be in forestry products because you're not going to, you got to manage a forest to get it to a place where you actually have any value of timber. And that sometimes could take 30 years, depending on what kind of forest it is. And so I don't really promote that. I just know the program really well. I'm working with some people who are looking for kind of like a um family property, but not just, I mean, they live in Colorado right now, but they're looking for like a a long hold, something that their family and their grandkids and their grandkids can just have. And we actually found the perfect property for them that has forest, open area, waterfront, and it's over 100 acres. But that parcel, which this is where the education of it really comes into play because that parcel is already enrolled in what's called the qualified forest program. And so the difference between the commercial forest program and the qualified forest program is just simply one thing. In the commercial, the public has the right to access it for hunting, and you cannot build a structure on it. It cannot be something that you live there. It's got to be exclusively forestry products with a forestry plan. And what you get is you get a discount in taxes, that helps bring down the cost of taxes every year. And then there's some other things where it like caps your taxable value so it can never go up. But the qualified forest program allows you to build a home on the property and restricts the public. So it's kind of a win-win for anyone who has a large tract of land that lives on site and doesn't want the public there. So it's plus you get the profit from the forestry. The owner does. The state doesn't. It's just a program that helps keep these forestry products available. So I don't really, to answer your question, I don't really promote it, but because I know it, sometimes you'll meet people and they'll fit the bill for this if this is something they want to do. Or if they're looking for land and they think they want to develop it for housing, but they're not developers. Sometimes you can say, well, because it's a good idea until it's done wrong. And then it's a problem.
So true. Christina, you talked at the beginning about the difference between owning property on a Great Lake and then owning property on an inland lake, which you mentioned, several for the sake of us, but also our audience. Kind of describe the difference between those two kinds of properties. What do we need to know about, kind of the dynamics of a Great Lake versus inland lakes?
Sure. Thanks for asking that because those are really important things that a lot of people don't know the difference. So when you own property on a Great Lake, you don't own to the water's edge. You only own to the all-time high water mark, which recently changed. About 5 years ago, it changed. It was the first time in 500 years it changed. So it's something to keep in mind. You're buying a waterfront property on Lake Michigan. You only own to the all-time high water mark. It doesn't matter where the water is. You just got to find that mark. It could be in the water. It could be out of the water. Who knows? It changes with every property. The public has the right to traverse in front of any property as long as they're on the water side of the all-time high water mark. So I have never had any clients or known someone that didn't know that, but there's all sorts of lawsuits that were issued and things throughout history where people buy a house and they're like, get off my property. And you're like, no, it's not your property. Right? I mean, there's all these stories of people coming out with shotguns and stuff. And you're like, whoa, this is not what I was signing up for today. But that's an important thing to know. Plus, the building restrictions are different. You got to be so many feet away from the all-time high water mark, which is different than an inland lake. Those setbacks are sometimes drastically different, and it depends on the lake. Also, with a Great Lake, anything that you're going to do, you're going to be dealing with the Army Corps of Engineers, or you're going to be dealing with EGLE, which is Department of Environmental Quality, essentially. They recently changed their name. So I think it's energy, environmental, something to do with gas as well. I can't remember. I'd have to look it up. But essentially the DEQ. So those are your governing departments that are going to tell you what you can and cannot do on that property. Whereas an inland lake, typically an inland lake that does not have an opening to the Great Lakes, you own in a pie shape to the center of the lake. So you actually own the ground underneath the water. So people can't really walk in front of your property. You could have a dock there, things of that manner. Also, the setbacks are different. The greenways are different, whether you can remove stumps or not. But then there's also inland lakes like Lake Charlevoix that is still a navigable waterway because it has an opening to Lake Michigan. And so because it has an opening to Lake Michigan, you do not own a pie shape to the center of the lake. You only own to the navigable waterway. And so something that's really interesting is if you have a property on a lake like that, technically you're supposed to be getting a permit for your dock from the Army Corps of Engineers. I honestly don't know anyone that has one, but you're supposed to. So just for the record, that's important to know. And then you've got things like rivers, whether you can, the rule around the river is you own to the center line of the river on the ground. However, Michigan has riparian rights. So every citizen in Michigan has the right to access the water. They may not be able to put their feet on the ground or set an anchor, but they can float it. And the rule of thumb in Michigan, which is really kind of funny, if you can float a log down it, you have the right to use it. So I haven't seen anyone float a log down a river, but lots of kayaks and canoes. And so it's interesting, as you're maneuvering through different states too, the riparian rights just don't exist in some states, right? Like they do in Michigan. So one thing I would like to know is I meet a lot of people who move here from or want to move here from other areas, and they feel like they get sticker shock when they show up because it's expensive to live here. But it's like the old saying goes, a view of the bay is worth half the pay. That really exists here. So, when people show up and they say, I want a waterfront property, and they tell me their budget, I say to them, well, we'll see what we can do. Well, keep in mind, there's a public access or a public beach on every lake up here. There's a couple that are private lakes, but they're very small, and you'd probably not want to swim there anyway because you have other options, right? So it's like, it's letting others kind of come to the conclusion of what they're going to be able to do and not do. Well, there's also really great neighborhoods that have, deeded private access. So it's shared with everyone in the neighborhood, but it's not open to the public. So there's lots of options for everyone.
That's so cool. You're making me want to buy land up there.
Come on.
Just got to tell you. And I just love to like listening to you, Christina, because it sounds like you, I mean, you have done all the research, you know it, and that is an incredible resource to all of your clients and friends and family. So I love that. Um, while we wrap up here, just wanted to ask you, like, what is something that's been super challenging in your business that you've kind of overcome, just to help our listeners? Maybe they're going through the same thing.
Boy, that's a good question. I feel like
Pop that on you.
yeah, it's all right. I feel like every year. So one thing that I've done consistently for the last 10 years is I review my business from the previous year. I go back and I look at all the people I've met and talked to and try to reach back out to them for one, but also figure out what I didn't do right. Right. So this business is it's an evolution every year. The goal is just to be better than you were the year before and not to set an unrealistic goal. I consider myself I'm a blue collar worker. I go to work every day. I work in the service industry. My job is to accommodate my clients to find them something that's extremely important in their life. And it doesn't matter how much money they have to spend or how many houses they've bought or sold. Every transaction, every single transaction is different. And every single one of them, even if an investor will tell you it isn't, is emotional. Because what you are buying is one, either a house to live in or a business that you're going to now invest in. So it's it's a fine line, but what I can say is going back, looking at your business, figuring out what you didn't really do well, figuring out how to leverage the things you didn't do well. Maybe you hire someone, maybe you just stop doing that. Maybe you just decide that's not what you're going to do anymore. And just, you know, giving yourself a little grace every year. This business is hard. It's hard, but it's great. And keeping yourself humbled, trying to not allow your ego to slip in. And
Hmm,
it's easy to do. So I would
totally.
say looking back at my career, if that's the one thing I could say that I reflect on every year and it's helped me build my business where I'm at, that's it.
So, last question. What does growth look like for you right now in 2026?
What growth looks like for me in 2026, I'm working on the foundations of the cornerstones of building a team so that I can use that leverage to take some time off, enjoy my grandkids, walk my dog, whatever I feel like doing. But also, growth for me looks like my team being skilled, trained, and confident enough to take on any task they need to take on so that no client is left behind. No inquiry is left behind. Because with that, it quiets my mind and then I can enjoy the day.
Mm, that's amazing. I love that. Well, Christina, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your time and your expertise. It's just been so lovely getting to know you. So thanks for being on our podcast. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. And I'll tell you, if you have any questions about real estate in Northwest Michigan, just give me a call.
Great. Yes, we'll be. We'll talk after.
Have a good day, ladies.
You too.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Momentum in Real Estate. We hope you found valuable insights and strategies to propel your real estate journey forward.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us continue to deliver content that resonates with you. Remember, success in real estate is about continuous learning, growth, and serving others. Keep that momentum going and watch your business thrive.
Until next time, keep pushing forward and bringing your real estate dreams to life.
This is Cory Wall
And Kristin James signing off from Momentum in Real Estate.